If you have your Bibles, if you'll turn to 1 Samuel chapter 17. Last week I spoke about the story of Ittai. If you were not here, you may be wondering who Ittai is. Well, it's online, so go ahead and go back and listen to the sermon. But Ittai, he was a man from the Philistine city of Gath, and it was the same city that produced Goliath. That was the Philistine city. It was a corrupt city. It produces Goliath, and we know the story of David and Goliath pretty well. Well, Ittai's story comes years after the story of David and Goliath. So this week, what I want to do is I want to go to the other side of the story of David and Goliath. I want to look at what leads up to it. Because Ittai saw a man, when he saw David, he saw a man that he thought is worth standing by. He followed him for years. He stood right by his side, but what did he see in David? Well, the side of the story we're going to look at today is what he saw in David and why he was able to stand by this man. The battle between David and Goliath is one of the most popular battles in the story. Whether you go to church or not, everybody knows about the story of David and Goliath. It's actually even an expression. You know, it's a David and Goliath type fight. People might not even know the Bible that well, but they know what a David and Goliath scenario is. We've got an underdog here facing somebody who is clearly the one everybody's voting for. We know what the expression is. It's a well-known story. David takes down a mighty giant with a rock. That's the only weapon David has on him. He's got a slingshot, he's got a rock, that's all he's got. And he takes down Goliath, and that gets to be pretty popular. Even today, we know the story very well. But before he ever got onto the battlefield, he gained a piece of knowledge that was going to equip him to take down Goliath. And I want to talk about that piece of knowledge that he got. How do you get the confidence to go up and stand in front of somebody who is completely armed? He is 9 to 11 feet tall, depends on which scholar you want to talk to, but even on the small side of that, it's a big dude. He's a big guy. So 9 feet to 11 feet tall, covered in armor, against a shepherd boy with a rock. It does not look good. It's not a really good matchup here. How do you get the confidence to be the shepherd boy in that situation? What knowledge do you need to have to be able to step out there and do this? This is a piece of knowledge that I want to address this morning. David enters into 3 different conversations before he meets up with Goliath. In those conversations, he gets that knowledge. We see the knowledge that he has. And I want to bring that out of the scripture this morning. David's father has sent him to check on his 3 older brothers who are actually fighting for King Saul. They're fighting in the army of King Saul. And Jesse sends David to go check on his brothers. He brings some food to them and just wants to get a report of how they're doing. For 40 days, Goliath has been coming out to the nation of Israel, and he has been presenting a challenge. One man, come out and fight me. If your man defeats me, then we serve you. But if I defeat the one man who comes out to fight me, then you serve us. That's the challenge. He's been out for 40 days, and nobody wants to take up the offer. Nobody wants to go head to head with Goliath. David was about to walk onto a scene that represented God's people in a terrible way. This shepherd boy is just coming to get a report for his dad. That's what he comes out for. When he sees the scenario, everything changes for David. So let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 17 in verse 21. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. And David left his supplies in the hand of a supply keeper, ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers. Then as he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines. And he spoke according to the same words. So David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. We usually picture this story in the wrong way. when we see the picture of David and Goliath, we usually see the army of Israel cowering as Goliath comes onto the field and presents the challenge. Goliath issues the challenge and nobody accepts it, and it all happens the next day. For 40 days we see Goliath coming out to an empty field, presenting a challenge, and then leaving. That's usually how we picture this. But that's not what's happening at all. If you look at the passage there, you see it's happening in a different way. The Israelites were actually in battle with the Philistines when Goliath walks out and challenges them. They're already in battle. They're already fighting. Then Goliath walks on the field. He presents his challenge, and when they see Goliath, they call off the battle for a little while, and they all run and hide. That's not exactly a pretty picture, but that's what's happening in Scripture. They're fighting already. Goliath walks on the field. All we did was add one more guy to the fight. One more guy walks into the battle, presents a challenge, and the Israelites flee. One big scary detail is added to the mix, and everybody takes off. This is what David just witnessed. When David comes to bring food to his brothers and get a report for his father, this is what he sees happen. Oh, they're all fighting. I see it. And then Goliath comes out, presents the challenge, and they all run away. This is what fires this 17-year-old boy up. David is 17 years old, coming to do what his father told him to do. He sees the battle going on, watching it happen. Goliath steps on the field. They all run away, and this 17-year-old kid is not happy about what he's seeing. He's now standing with men who have just run away from the fight, and he hears them talking with each other. Look at verse 25. So the men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel." King Saul has considerably sweetened the pot for anybody who will go out and defeat Goliath. They will receive wealth. They get the girl. It's one of those stories. So you get wealth, you get the girl, and they don't have to worry about tax day anymore. This is a good reward. This is a pretty good incentive. Just go out, take Goliath down, and you get these things. You will be a wealthy person. You get the girl, and you don't have to worry about taxes. You can see how desperate Saul is for somebody to get out there and defeat Goliath. It's a pretty good offer, but nobody's willing to take it. Nobody wants to take it. After all, what good is any of it when you die out in the field with Goliath? Yeah, great offer, but if I'm dead, I'm dead. I can't really take you up on the offer after that huge man kills me. So nobody wants to go out and take Goliath on. David hears these guys talking, and he joins in on the conversation. Look at verse 26. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, "What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" And the people answered him in this manner, saying, "So shall it be done for the man who kills him." We all know the story well. We know what David's up to here. David basically just asked them, "What did you say was going to be given to me when I kill him?" I want to say it one more time. What's in it for me when I kill him? Because we know David's heart. We know what's going on here. We read the story. We know the story. He is upset that nobody is taking on Goliath. So he asks them to repeat what they just said. Tell me again. What do I get when I take Goliath down? Go ahead, tell me one more time. What do I get? Israel's army just ran away from this giant, and there was a teenager trying to find out what comes with the victory package when he defeats him. You got this teenager out in the field saying, just one more time, I get the girl, and I'm rich, and whatever taxes are, I don't have to pay those. Yeah, it sounds good. This is a good package. I want to take that. This kid somehow developed a lot of confidence in his short time on earth. In 17 years' time, he's got a lot of confidence. He's on fire to do this for the glory of God. This is usually the time where Satan steps in and tries to extinguish the fire in any one of our lives. As soon as we are on fire to do something for God, Satan steps in and tries to put that fire out as quickly as he can. Look at verse 28. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David. And he said, "Why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle." David's oldest brother sees him talking with these men, and he gets upset. He sees his little brother out there talking to the soldiers, and he's not happy about what he's seeing. Remember, Eliab was the one that was rejected by Samuel to be the king. Remember when Samuel comes to select a king for Israel to take Saul's place? Eliab, the oldest brother, comes out, and even Samuel sees him and says, "Now that's a king right there. He's huge. He's tall. That's a man people are going to respect." And God says, "I rejected him. Not Eliab. Not him. I want the shepherd boy." Because men look on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. Eliab was the first one rejected to be king. David was the one God chose to be king. There could be a lot of jealousy and envy going on between David and Eliab in this story. Eliab's questioning David's motives, and he's declaring that David was out there for all the wrong reasons. "You came out here to see the battle. I know what you're doing. I know why you're here. You just came out to see the battle." And he even accuses him of being irresponsible. "Who'd you leave the sheep with, David? You know that's your job. Who did you leave the sheep with?" So automatically all the motives of David are being questioned by his older brother. I like David's response here, and it almost lets you know that there's a history going on between these two guys. But look at David's response in verse 29. And David said, "What have I done now? Is there not a cause?" Look at the word "now." That kind of tells you there's a history there. What have I done now? Eliab, it's like I'm always messing up with you. Okay, what is it now? What is it now, Eliab? What have I done? Isn't there a cause worth fighting for? I'm not here for what you're accusing me of being here for. There's a cause out here. Isn't there a cause we should be fighting for right now? David actually clears things up with Eliab and brings him into the shameful situation, not David. You're accusing me of doing something wrong, and I'm asking you why we're hiding. Don't we have a cause? He's defying the God of Israel. Why are we all hiding? Isn't there a cause, Eliab? David didn't just show up with confidence this day. He showed up with a purpose. He has confidence and he has purpose here. Says, isn't there a cause? Isn't there a purpose? We should be out there doing something right now. Goliath was a man who needed to be introduced to the God of Israel. And David was more than happy to make the introduction. 17 years old. Yeah, I like to introduce that guy to God. I want to make the introduction. David's found himself talking with some scared soldiers and his angry brother at this point. But he must have been preaching quite a sermon to them, because he's attracting a lot of attention out on that field. Someone thought this news was worthy to take to the king. I'm going to go tell Saul. There's a 17-year-old boy out in the field, and he's talking to all the soldiers, and it's stirring up quite a ruckus out here. Somebody needs to tell King Saul. Look at verse 31. Now when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul, and he sent for him. Somebody ran to the king with the news. And when Saul asks what the news was, they basically told him, somebody let the youth group out. We're all out here, all these men are out here fighting, and the youth group got left out, and there's a 17-year-old boy out there, and he thinks he's going to take down Goliath. Well, what's he got? He's not armed, nothing. He's just a shepherd boy. He came with some cheese to give to his brothers. That's all he's got. He's armed with cheese. And he's out there talking about how he's going to take this giant down. Well, he's got a lot of attention here. He's really stirred the pot. Now everybody's talking about him, and the king wants to see David. Bring him to me. I need to talk to this kid. We have a teenage boy down here telling your troops that he's going to defeat Goliath. Well, Saul's been looking for somebody to fight Goliath, so he's interested, but I'm pretty sure this isn't what he was expecting. So Saul sends for David, and David shows up. Look at verse 32. Then David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." Satan does a pretty good job in this area too. Satan loves to step up when this time presents itself. Just when you have those dreams of doing something great for God, Satan sends someone or something in your way to remind you that you are not able. You are not able to do this. You can't do great things because of your past. You're not able to do it. You've already messed up. Look at your past. You can't take down giants in your life. God can't use you for this because of who you've been. You've messed up too much to ever amount to be anything of real significance to God at all. Satan wants you to hear that. It's a lie. It's a lie. Right now we've got a shepherd boy armed with cheese, guys. I mean, it's not looking good. And God says, yeah, that's how I'm going to take down Goliath. If God can use a shepherd boy with cheese, he can use you. He can use any one of us. This message of not being enough is the one that Satan wants us all to focus on. You can't do this. You are not able. What King Saul does not realize is that David did not come to be anything great. He came to be faithful. That's it. He's not coming out there to make a name for himself. He's coming out to magnify the name of somebody who is already significant, somebody who is already great. I'm coming out to magnify the name of God. I'm not here to make a name for myself. Being faithful to God can happen regardless of your past. It may not be a choice that you made in the past, but it's a choice that you have the freedom to make now. You can be faithful to God starting now. God says, look backwards, and God says, or Satan says, look backwards, and God says, look what's coming. Look forward. I can do something with your broken past. I can use you in spite of your broken past. And Satan says, no, let that define you. And God says, let me give you a new definition. Let me do something with you. Let me make something great out of you. Satan does not want you to have that news. And the cause is a worthy one. So look forward, don't look backwards. David has shown that he has the confidence to make this move. He stated that the cause that's out there is a worthy cause and the challenge must be met. But why does he think he can accomplish this? Why does this 17-year-old kid who has just walked out onto this field, what makes him think he's going to kill the giant? You've got all these trained soldiers out there doing nothing. They're not defeating anybody out there. So why does David think he's got what it takes to take down the giant? And that's a reasonable question. You're a teenager who watches sheep. And you want to go out there and do what nobody else has the courage to do? Saul offers David his armor to protect him. And David says, I haven't tried that. It's not been tried and tested. I don't want your armor. What are you going to use? I've got a slingshot. I'm going to use the slingshot. I've tested that. I've tried that. I'm going to use what I know is going to work. I haven't tried your offer, so I don't want to take your offer. Saul even offers to send protection with David. And David says, no, it hasn't been tested and tried. I'm going to go with what has been tested and tried, and that's God. And he has proven to be true every time. I will take my slingshot and I'll go out there with God. But why does he think he's the one? Why does he think he can accomplish it? Our answer's found in verse 34 through 37. Let's look at these verses. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it, and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Good luck, kid. This is where we find the knowledge that David had that made him equipped to take down Goliath, right there. We don't have all the details of this wild animal attack. We don't have this. These are the details we have. We don't get to see that story unfold, but we do have enough to know what David's been through. You fought off a lion and a bear who were attacking the sheep. David had the responsibility of watching over and protecting his father's sheep. And this was an extremely important job because it tied into the welfare of the family. David's job was important to take care of the sheep. David was a teenager and may not have had any idea what he wanted to be one day. He's 17 years old. He may have had no clue what God could do with him. He didn't know what he wanted to be one day, but he knew what he was supposed to be that day. I am supposed to take care of the sheep. And when the lion came, he fought off the lion. When the bear came, he fought off the bear. He was the one who needed to protect the sheep. When the lion and the bear showed up, David did not run and hide. He moved forward and took care of what he knew he was supposed to take care of that day. He didn't sit there thinking, I wonder if this is what God has brought me to. This is it. A lion just came onto the field. Oh, my 17 years of life, this is what it's come down to. I'm going to get destroyed by a lion and a bear. That's not what he was thinking. He moved forward with this. He could have lost his life doing it, but God delivered him. Because God didn't bring him to that. He brought him through that. That's what's happening out on that field. When a lion shows up, he faces the lion and God brings him through that struggle. When the bear shows up, he faces the bear and God brings him through that trial. David understood at that point in his life, God doesn't bring you to things, he brings you through things. And he has this confidence in his life because he's been through this kind of stuff before. This event echoed in the mind of David when he stood before King Saul. King Saul is standing there with him. You are not able. And God reminds him of an event that happened in the past. God didn't give up on me when I stood before wild animals. He was there. He brought me through that. He did not bring me to that event. He brought me through that event. This is what gave him the courage and the confidence to face Goliath. He knew that God wasn't going to leave him in the middle of the event. I didn't bring you here to drop you off here. I brought you here to bring you to the other side of this. I didn't bring you to this. I'm going to bring you through this. If you look at the demeanor of the other men in the story, you see that they've kind of hit the wall. They're afraid and they can't stand up to the challenge at all. All the soldiers are hiding from Goliath. Nobody is able to do this. David almost seems excited about it. I get the girl, I don't pay taxes, and I'm wealthy. Just checking because I'm going to go out there and I'm going to kill him. 17-year-old shepherd boy. He almost seems excited about it. He seems to have the same outlook that James has in the New Testament. Look at this verse with me in James chapter 1 and verse 2. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. When we fall into different trials in life, James says to count it all joy. It's okay. Count this all joy. It says to let the testing of your faith produce patience. The word patience in the Greek is actually the word endurance. The testing of your faith is going to produce endurance. The testing of your faith produces endurance, the ability to stand constant. Let the trials do their job. What they are going to produce is patience and endurance, the ability to stand constant in your faith. He wants you to believe that everything that you've been through in life is for a purpose. I want you, and Satan on the other hand wants you to believe that everything that God has brought you to and through in life has come down to this right here. This trial that I'm facing, oh great, it all came down to this. No, it's not to this, it's through this. It doesn't come down to this. This has come so God can bring you through this too. Satan doesn't want you to see the through this version of your trial. He just wants you to see the to this version of your trial. If he can get us to see it this way, then we'll be just like all the other soldiers out on that field, doing nothing. We'll live in fear. We'll live in discouragement. We'll live in guilt because of past decisions. We will be standing there, moving nowhere. And God says, hey, all of that, I want you to see the through this version. You're looking at the to this version. I want you to see the through this version because I've got great things planned for you. But look at all the things that I've done. Yeah, but you can't see the things I'm going to do. You should see that. That's impressive. What you've done, you don't think that's impressive because it's not. You should see what I'm going to do with what you provide, what you give me. Now that's impressive. I'm going to take down giants in your life that you didn't think you had the ability to take down. I want to show you the through this version. Let me have it. Give that over to me. Yield that to me. Because I want to show you what a great and almighty God can do in the life of a broken person. Let me take you through it. I didn't bring you to it to drop you off here. I brought you to it to take you through it. David understood that God wasn't finished just because the situation seems hopeless. There's no way God can do anything. It's hopeless. No, David understood that it wasn't over there. The trials were there to produce the endurance to stand up in faith. And he understood this. That day, David understood why the lion and the bear were allowed to attack the sheep. When David was speaking to Saul, God brought this back to his mind. Saul says, you're not able. And God says, hey, remember the lion and the bear? Like, now hold on, Saul. I am able. I just thought of something. I fought a lion and I fought a bear. And God brought me through both of those things. And that giant out there is going to end up with the same fate. Because the same God that brought me through the lion and the bear will bring me through this battle also. So let me go. Let me fight him. When David realized that the lion and the bear were necessary in his life, something happened to David. He had the courage, the strength, the endurance to stay constant in his faith. The trials brought patience, brought the endurance, gave him the confidence to stand up and say, God was the same then as he is now. God's not changing. Let me take down the giant. Let me take down Goliath. Those were the trials that God was using to strengthen him for Goliath. We don't have any record of the soldiers facing wild animals. Not one other soldier in the story we have a record of them facing wild animals. David's oldest brother doesn't. His story seems to be animal free too. They were the ones discouraging David, and David says, hold on, there's a lion and a bear. I have a lion and a bear in my history, and now I'm going to have a giant too. I'm going to take down the giant too. God allowed this experience to fall in David's lap. When he faced the lion and the bear, David could have cried out to the Lord and said, "Why me, God? Why me? Why did this have to happen to me? Nobody else has to face lions and bears. Why me? Why me?" David could have cried out that. We do that in our own lion and bear stories. When bad things happen to us, what do? Why me? This isn't happening to anybody else. Why me? David doesn't do that. Nobody else has to fight a lion or a bear today. Why do I have to do this? David doesn't cry that to God. He faced the problem and then gave God the credit for delivering him through the problem. Many times we allow trials to be wasted in our life. The trial is there for a purpose. The trial is there to strengthen you. When you fall into various trials, James says, count it all joy. But it's tough. Yeah, I know. But you should see the through it version. Don't look at the to it version. Look at the through it version. This trial is going to bring endurance. It's going to produce patience. It's going to make it so you can stand constant in your faith. When you see the trials come, count it all joy. Count it all joy. Instead, we grow bitter or resentful that we have to go through that. Nobody else has to go through a lion and a bear. Why do I have to? And we grow resentful. We get bitter. James actually tells us to count it all joy. This is the knowledge that David had to become a champion against Goliath. This is the knowledge he had right here. It's another trial. It's another trial. And I know the through it version. I've been there. I know what God can do. Before he killed Goliath, he wanted to let Goliath know the main difference between the two of them. So he has one more conversation before he drops the giant. Look at verse 45. Then David said to the Philistines, "You come to me with the sword, with the spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. You come to me with what seems to be successful, but I come to you with what has always been successful. You have weapons, I have God. And I'm going to fight you." By the way, David says over and over again, this battle is the Lord's. David wasn't the champion of this story. He says, I'm going to introduce you to the champion of the story. You think you're big. Wait till you see the champion of our story. He's big. I'm going to let God fight this battle. And God did. In order for the Israelites to be freed from Egyptian captivity, God had to bring them through the Red Sea. You remember as they all complained, "Look, Moses, you brought us out here to kill us. Now we're trapped." God had to bring them to the Red Sea to take them through the Red Sea. It was the trial. It was the difficult thing that God used to get them to the victory side of the story. In order for Jesus to save my soul, he had to go through the cross. The trial says, just wait till we get to the other side. You'll see the victory in this story. You'll see what I'm going to take you through. Not to, through. If God's willing to face the trials for our good, shouldn't we be able to, or be willing to face them for his good? When you run into a trial in your life, count it all joy. By the way, you will look crazy to the people around you when life starts getting bad and you start praising God. Do you not know what's happening? No, I don't, but I can't wait to find out. I see the circumstances, but I don't know what God's doing through the circumstances, and I'm praising God because he's got it under control. And it's going to be okay because he didn't bring me to this. He's going to bring me through this. I'm looking at the through this version, not the to this version. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials. David grew to see a lot of suffering in his lifetime. He faced many trials and grew through many of his own shortcomings in life. He saw how the world produced wickedness at every turn. He fell into sin with Bathsheba. He was hunted by King Saul. He watched his sons murder each other. And as we spoke about last week, he even had his oldest son try to steal the throne from him. David saw suffering. He faced many trials in his life. But he's also the one that penned these words that I'm about to show you. At the end of David's life, I want you to see the testimony that he lays out for all of us to see. He saw the trials, he saw the suffering, but there was one thing that remained constant through it all. Look at Psalms chapter 37 and verse 25. I have been young, and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken. God has never let us down. Never. And I've been through many trials. We've got a through it God, not a to it God. He doesn't bring you to the trial to drop you off in the trial. He comes to the trial with you to walk through the trial with you. And he wants to take you to the other side. He has used every single trial to strengthen David. Because of the times he had to face the lion and the bear, he understood this amazing truth right here. God does not bring you to trials. This is not your destination. He brought you here so he could take you to a further destination. He brought you here to bring you through. He uses those trials to strengthen your faith. He uses them to help you reflect Jesus Christ. Don't waste the trials. Don't waste that. Look at 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 6. It says, in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being more precious than gold that perishes, though it be tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Let God use the trial to magnify his Son. Let God use the trial to take you through the trial so that you can magnify the name of our Almighty God on the other side of that trial. Look what he just did. That trial that just came in my life, look what God did. I was a shepherd boy versus giant scenario. Didn't know how I was going to get through that, but the giant fell. Look what God just did. Let the trial be used to glorify God in your life. David had the mindset which stood out from the mentality of every other soldier on that field. They saw a giant they didn't want to come to. And David saw a giant that he was going to get to go through. It was a totally different mentality. David saw joy and victory on the other side of Goliath. Everyone else saw something that stopped them in their tracks. It's too big. It's impossible. There's nothing we can do. David says, but I have a rock. And I have a God who made the rock and made the giant. The giant can fall. God cannot. So I'm going to go out there with God and we're going to take down the giant. This is the difference between a life that's saturated in the person of Jesus Christ and a life that can be easily distracted by trials. I'm not doing anything for God. Why not? I'm just so depressed because of my circumstances. I'm not doing anything for God. Why not? Because I'm just the worry, the anxiety building up in my life. I can't move forward and do the things I think God would want me to do because of all of this. Why aren't you doing anything for God in your life? Have you seen my past? Do you not know my past? Do you not know all the reasons, all the ways that I let God down in my past? Well, here's something that was pointed out in the youth group today in teen class. Anytime that you think you let God down, let him remind you you were never holding him up. You're not letting God down, you let yourself down. Now let God pick you up and do great things in your life. Satan says, you let God down too much. He can't do anything with you. Let him down. He says, they were never holding me up. Let me do great things even through broken people. I can do amazing things with a life that is yielded to me. We're all going to face trials in life, but God did not allow them to come to take you captive. That is not why the trials came. Don't be taken into captivity by your circumstances, by your trials. Don't do that. That's not why God allowed them to come. God will allow the giant to come in your life. Sometimes the giants come because others need to see the giant fall in your life. And sometimes the giant comes because you need to see the giant fall in your life. But there is not a circumstance, not a trial, not a situation out there that is bigger than your God. So as big as you think that giant is in your life, that giant can fall, and that giant will fall, because it is no match for God. Either way, giant's coming down. Giant's going to come down. Maybe you're facing some kind of a lion or bear scenario in your life right now. Maybe there's something going on in your life right now, and you say, it's too big. I don't know how to get through this. I don't know what to do. I can't believe God allowed this to happen in my life. Why is this happening? Why did God drop me off in the middle of this? He didn't bring you to that to drop you off in the middle of that. He brought you to that. He can use that to take you through that. And if you will count it all joy when you fall into those trials, you will see what that trial can produce. It produces the patience and the endurance to stand constant in your faith, because you've got a really big God. I'm telling you, that day when David fought Goliath, there was not one unsurprised Philistine on that field. We gave you the best of the best, and you sent out a shepherd boy. Every one of those Philistines were shocked that day. The Israelites were probably shocked that day. But there was one man on that field that was not surprised at all. And it was David. When the giant fell, he's probably running up to Goliath to get the sword out of Goliath's sheath to cut Goliath's head off. He's probably running up to Goliath saying, I told you so. I told you. Well, how'd you know you were going to be able to do that? Because I faced a lion and I faced a bear. And God did not drop me off there. He brought me through both of those. And He can bring me through this too. I don't know what you're facing in your life. I don't know if there's a lion or bear scenario happening in your life right now. Maybe it's in the version of finances. Maybe it's in the version of relationship. I don't know what it is. But God did not bring you to that to drop you off there. He brought you to that to take you through that. We've got an amazing God. And we need to understand that He's bigger than any giant that may come in our life. Trust Him. When you run into various trials, count it all joy, because God's going to do something amazing right there.